Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Please permit me to start on earlier established protocols. I have to start by first thanking all of you here, commissioners, senior state government officials, for making the trip. I understand we have about 18 to 20 states here represented, which is great. And I think some also, we've got about 100 people attending online, and we are broadcasting on Facebook and some other channel. So thank you for coming. And I think already listening to the conversations from the Minister's Welcome Address, Dr. Ambassador Arca, talking about the key things, that the practical things that need to happen, and also setting the expectation in terms of where we are and moving forward to the brilliant conversation we had from you. Andrew, thank you very much, and Dr. Koka. It makes my life a lot easier talking about the next of my own presentation. I think, but first of all, let me correct something. So yes, true, this is my 4th year in the public service. But what I find is that we've got a lot of great people in the public service. We've got people, we've got a great system in our public service. Things take longer to get done, but there are several rules and several considerations. In fact, the way I look at it is that, you know, when they say the law, the long arm of the law, for instance, it's actually because if the law gets upset and acts, people will get hurt. So the long arm of the public service means that every angle is considered, all the implications are considered, and actions are taken. That is not to say that we cannot move faster, but I will like to recognize the great work that people in our public service are doing. And part of I'm happy that we are having this event for the next 2-3 days. Since this year, we've been to 7 states now, and everywhere we went, we have, we were quite well received, and we communicated the impact of what we need to be done in terms of AfCFTA. But if we've done 7 states in 7-8 months, before we cover the 36 states, that will be another year or 2. And we can't afford to wait, which is why we convene this. That is number 1. And number 2 is, and you'll see, is that this is a journey of 1,000 miles. This will take years to accomplish. And Dr. Kingsley will understand when I say that this is a complex problem, which means that we need to approach this in an iterative manner. It's a corn problem. You can't, looking at a corn, know how many of the sheets you get out before you get the actual corn. You just keep going until you hit the cob. And that is what we have faced. So this is for us actually setting the stage for the numerous conversations, for the numerous late night meetings, for the personal conversations that you will be having with yourself, saying, how do I do this? Because it will come. Already working with the NDAs at the federal level, there are people that are as energetic as we are, but they're asking, so what do we do? How do I want to be part of AfCFTA, I want to make it happen, but what am I supposed to do? I have some answers, but I don't have all the answers. And as Ambassador said earlier, some of the answers are even yet to come because they will depend on the negotiations that are ongoing. They will depend on the institutions that will be created that haven't been created. And someone mentioned to me that the EU project that we all hail today is about 72 years old. I read in the papers, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, that the ASEAN project is 30 years already. So that's the Asian Free Trade Area project. It's 30 years already, and we are just starting. We're not even up to 1 year. So that's to tell you, that to prepare your mind for the journey that we have just started. But like Andrew said earlier, we don't need to wait 100 years. We can jumpstart. The key word is leapfrogging, and we can do it because we have what it takes. The environment enables that. So very quickly, I will go through my presentation. I'll try to, I know everybody, next slide, everybody knows a lot about AfCFTA, but let me just take about 5 minutes to recap what AfCFTA is all about. How many people know about the Africa Economic Community? I mean, by raise of hands. Has anyone heard of an Africa Economic Community? Just like the EEC. You know about the European Economic Community that gave rise to the EU? Yeah. There was an EEC, the European Economic Community, right? Yeah. The African Economic Community was actually the treaty that established that was signed here in Abuja in 1991. That is the Abuja Treaty that also gave rise to this AfCFTA that we're talking about now. So if AfCFTA is a child, it'll probably be out of university by now. But this is how long it takes. But the AfCFTA agreement, this is lifted from the agreement itself. It has some general objectives and some specific objectives. And it's about creating a single market for made in Africa trading goods and services. It's about facilitating movement of capital and investment. It's about promoting sustainable and inclusive socio-economic development. So this inclusive development, this community approach to development came ahead of the global push for inclusiveness and all of that. Africa already started talking about it because we know that is the only way we can exercise our might on the global stage. In fact, in the Abuja Treaty, I can summarize that there are clauses that you can summarize to say that no country shall be left behind. It is in there in the agreement, and it talks about a fund that will make sure that the small countries are able to take advantage of the AfCFTA, because otherwise they become the weakest link and they will be exploited by other trading nations outside of Africa. It's about prosperity. It's about competitiveness, and Andrew talked about balancing comparative advantage and competitiveness. It's about industrial development, and today we've heard about industrial development, not just development of shoe factories and fertilizer plants and so on, which are important, but it's also about services. And services is critical for us because we already have immense capacity in that area. And services don't require humongous power plants. We already have the people, we already have the brains. If you think about it, and for me as with background in management consulting, I said that for a number of years, when you're making strategic presentations and you talk about global trends, you talk about the aging population in Europe. You know, you just mount it, aging population, you talk about this, you talk about that. But I will confess that it never occurred to me that that aging population means brain drain of Nigerian nurses to the point that we have a crisis. Because if it did, then maybe I should have advised my client to get into the business of training nurses. Maybe I should have advised state government to actually establish nursing and care institutions and facilities so that we actually take advantage, we are proactive about it, which we are not now. But think about it that way. So it's about laying foundation for a customs union. So what we have is the base level of economic integration. This is just a free trade agreement. Borders don't come down. The monetary institutions of every country and monetary policies of every country stays intact. All you have is an agreement that if these goods meet the rules of origin, you allow it to pass without charging duty. All you have is that we agree on the standards that will apply so that you don't spend money and energy certifying to NAFDAC and do the same thing in Morocco, in Egypt, in Liberia, in South Africa. It is about degrees. If you are an engineer today here in Nigeria, can you get up to South Africa and put your degree on the table and say practice? The answer is no. You will have to go through their current equivalent. But if our current and the equivalent in South Africa have understanding and go through the same processes and the same kind of examinations or some kind of qualifications, then that your current certification becomes even more useful, because you can just get on a plane, go to South Africa and be part of a bridge project or be part of a nuclear power plant project or whatever project that is going on there. It's similar to what we have in terms of double taxation treaties. We all know about the double taxation treaties that we have with many countries, so that if you pay tax in one country, you don't pay tax in another. These are the practical steps to bring down the cost of transaction in Africa. This is what AfCFTA is about in a nutshell. So, and how it intends to achieve that is where it's eliminating tariffs and non-tariff barriers. It's about corporations, customs cooperation. It's about cooperating on investment, intellectual property rights, and competition policy. So today, yes, our Nollywood is doing a lot, but how much? And they are making a lot of money, but how much of that can they make if we have a strong intellectual property rights? So if you think about it as a state government, it is your tax money that is being taken away from you. Because the amount of money that you can retain from those people that are based in your state means the amount of tax you can get from them. So you cannot ignore them and say, yeah, it's individual. It's not. So it gets down to that kind of practical level. There's also a mechanism for settlement of trade disputes at country-to-country level. So this is what AfCFTA is trying to do. Very quickly, go to the next slide. So Ambassador Arca already talked about the coverage in terms of trade in goods, trade in services, dispute settlement, but there's also another protocol free movement of persons, which was also signed by many countries the same time AfCFTA agreement was signed. We haven't signed up Nigeria, but it's one of those things that we need to do. And on the phase 2, which started this year, is investment policy, competition, intellectual property rights, and digital economy. So talking about, even me at the time was asking, what are they going to talk about under digital economy? But talking about the sovereign data rules, for instance, is something to talk about, and a whole host of other things that we need to talk about and agree so that we deal as Africa. The benefits from the state level is about IGR, is about employment creation. Just bring it down to that level. Already we know the unemployment is already taking a security dimension. What we have in Nigeria is a revenue problem. It's not a cost problem, because if we create a revenue, the unit cost, the scale will drive down our unit cost. So it's about creating jobs. And so it's about export. Interestingly, when I was in the course of the AfCFTA, we were talking about what does this really mean. And we take the sugar example. We have a sugar council, and over the years, we've had investments in sugar processing. Now, what it means now is that the sugar processing plants that are serving Nigeria can now serve the entire Africa if they are in the schedule. What it means now is that all the FMCGs, all everything that we're doing, instead of thinking Nigeria, we're thinking Africa, and that is huge. To go to the next slide very quickly. I think trade in services is not well understood. And let me just take a moment to talk about the different modes of services supply. This is for every trade in services. So there is the cross-border trade, which covers flow from one territory into the territory of another. So when you do a design or give a legal advice here in Nigeria and then send it across to someone in anywhere, any other country, that is a mode 1 trade in service. Mode 2 is consumption abroad. This is when we get up, I mean, we're all just coming back from the Intra-Africa Trade Fair in South Africa. It was huge. The travel was challenging because there were just too many people, they couldn't even come. But just imagine the thousands of people that landed in Durban spending money. That's a huge amount of money. So even from a state perspective, you now need to, the same way you're thinking about the factories, you also now need to start thinking about programs, events that you can take on an African level that will bring people to your state to come and spend their money. That is huge. Then the commercial presence is when you now establish subsidiaries in other countries. So Access Bank today, the UBA, and other companies have subsidiaries in other African countries. So that in itself is a mode of service supply. And the fourth one is the presence of natural persons. So if you, for instance, a lecturer, a professor, move to go on a sabbatical or even go for a project, a short-term project for a couple of weeks and months in another country or to teach a course, that is a fourth mode of supply. And what is the important thing to note, or one of the important things to note, is that the barriers to trade under each mode is different. So understanding each mode helps you to start processing, understanding the barriers, and that start thinking about how you are going to overcome them as state. If we are talking about remote working is called cross-border trade or cross-border supply now. So the businesses that you attract to your states, not only do you now think about providing them power and digital highway, you need to ensure that the regional rules are competitive enough for you, because it is a battle. We're battling with South Africa, Morocco, Egypt, other countries for this same kind of services on the same market. So that is a key point to know. This is just 101 on trading services. Go next. By the way, before I move forward, the AfCFTA is liberalizing 5 services sectors, starting with 5. Financial services, business services, communication services, transport services, travel, and tourism services. What this means is that you're making the rules easier so that companies from other, it makes it easier for your businesses in Nigeria to establish in other countries and vice versa. Go to the next slide quickly. So, in terms of the practical way this will work, for goods, AfCFTA will liberalize or remove import duty on 90% of tradable items. Zero tariff over 10 years. So, again, like Dr. Ambassador Arca said, we need to now look at where we are competitive, look at what is the Nigerian schedule, and look at which countries are we then based on what they want to liberalize, because that's what you want to target. Which countries are we going to target? Because the country that liberalizes palm oil may not liberalize cotton. So if country A liberalizes palm oil, a state like Delta State or Imo State would target it. But another country B that liberalizes cotton in a state like Kano can then target it. But these are the details that we will all work out over time. The next slide. Rules of origin, African content. So for those products to be to qualify for duty-free entry, they must have a minimum local content, African content, not local, not Nigerian content, it's African content. What does this mean? For instance, South Africa already exports cars to Europe. Egypt already exports textiles to Europe. So, yes, we are trying to, we have capacity to assemble cars, but we can also produce glasses, components, battery heads, batteries, leather seats, and so on, and supply South Africa, and in return, help them meet the African content to bring their cars here. So it's about that regional value chain. But bringing it closer to home as well, and think about leather and the shoe industry. It's about what is already happening between Kano State Government and Abia State Government, talking about can we source our leather from Kano for the shoes that are produced in Abia. So even as you are here, it's about which state will I partner with. so that we can together build an ecosystem. Supply me part A, I add part B, and then we grow the value of the product that we send out. Interestingly, last week in South Africa, with the Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, we had meetings on the sidelines with the Minister of Trade of South Africa, already talking about what are the products that Nigeria wants to bring to South Africa. But beyond that conversation at that national level, we also met the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, who KwaZulu-Natal province is the second largest economy in South Africa, and they're already talking about it. So yes, at the national level it's fine, but at our own provincial level, we've already started identifying the products, the companies that we will work with. So as states, you need to go beyond the policies. You need to identify the companies that are residents in your state that you will work with, that you will help to scale to be able to actually produce what we are going to export to other countries. It is as practical as that. Other countries, I met with my counterpart in Ghana, and they are already looking at different categories of companies. So there are those companies that are already trading under ETLS, the ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme. And the conversation is, people, can you also take some of these your products to other African countries? They are also looking at things like, okay, target countries. These are the target countries. And I was giving an example. Of salt. So the kind of analysis that we are already beginning to do at the national level, but it needs to cascade down to the states. So they did the analysis and they saw that Nigeria will import a lot of salt from Brazil. And they have a lot of salt in Ghana. And they now started analyzing and saying, well, how come Nigeria goes past us to go to Brazil to go and import salt? And they found out that some of the policies that they have, some of the taxes that they have, direct and indirect taxes, make it too expensive for Nigerian businesses to import salt from Ghana. So they are beginning to now say, okay, what are we going to do? So I'm making these points to bring it home that really, for this to work, this is the level of granularity that we need to work on to make this work. It's about hand-holding our businessmen and women to trade because we need their taxes. Lots of it. Back to this, the key point here is that rules of origin means that whatever we are selling must undergo significant transformation, or either wholly obtained, 100% made in Africa, or will undergo significant transformation. And there are rules about those. Go to the next slide. So you ask yourself, how will this work? How would other countries recognize products that satisfy rules of origin? For us in Nigeria, one of the biggest problems that was identified is that products from non-African countries will come into Africa and they will just change the label and move it to Nigeria. Product that is certified will have an AfCFTA number similar to your NAFDAC number. There will be a rigorous assessment of the product, the rules of origin, to ensure that it meets the threshold required for that product. it's something to know. The process of around this is still being put together, but it is important information to know, because you will be facilitating this at the States. Go to the next slide. With all we've said so far, I think this is clear. The African market constitutes 2 or 3% of the global trade. But in terms of imports of goods and services, Africa imports 600 billion every year. Nigeria, with all our oil, we export about $60 billion per annum. So if we drive to take 10% of Africa's market, we will double Nigeria's export, and it is doable. That is how we came about the 1.2 billion for every state to target. If you grow the scale to push out $1.2 billion of export, it's a game changer for every state, really. And we need to do it because it creates jobs. But also the opportunities are there across sectors, goods, services. You go to the next slide. And it's also about wealth protection, because if you export is a means of hedging against the currency devaluation that we witness. Apart from the fact that you have a bigger market. So here, this slide is just to say there are so many challenges to overcome. But like one of the earlier speakers said, some people see challenges, others see opportunities. And I can tell you that across every challenge that we see here, our youth, our businesses are already trying to tackle them. Every initiative that we have brought up, we've seen a lot of people in the private sector trying, using technology, entrepreneurship or whatever, trying to tackle them. So really, the train has left the station. Go to the next slide. So very quickly, very quickly, for a number of months, in fact, from the time we started this, the question that I was asked repeatedly is, are we ready? Which product are we going to export? So at the point, I started asking myself, are we sure? So we did an analysis and said, are there even products that Nigeria is exporting today? That's $10 million. What? And we chose the number arbitrarily. You can choose 20, you can choose 40, but we just say minimum $10 million. Just to show that some people, in spite of all the difficulties that we face, some people have found a way to overcome them. And we came up with so many. If we look at our oil and gas, right? We are exporting more than Africa needs, so that is fine in terms of crude oil. But we are leaving money on the table in terms of petroleum products and the value-added services. In terms of gas, in terms of fuels, petroleum products, in terms of even the power that we can generate from that. That is just an example. But even machinery, plastics, rubber, name it, and everything you find here on this slide, and you have this presentation, Africa imports more than $1 billion of it on an annual basis. Everything you find here. And we have companies that are already exporting formally informal market is even bigger. Go to the next slide. But we also found that there are products that Nigeria is nowhere, but they are so huge that you can't ignore them. Agriculture with mining and so on. So if you focus on it and start providing components to cars and improving or increasing what we consume or local demand for made in Nigeria vehicles, we will go a long way in this sector. Africa, by the projection, is that we need about 5 million. We are a market of 5 million vehicles. Africa produces, think about, less than a million vehicles per annum. So there is 4 million vehicles that is there for the taking, and we can take. There are other pharmaceutical products, sugar, and so on. This is just a list. The idea is to say that yes, there are arrowheads that we can use and start running now, but there's also areas that we cannot ignore. Go to the next slide. Services, the same thing. I mean, Andrew has actually listed, Andrew and Ayotunde Koka, they've listed areas where we can hit and move very fast. And the truth of the matter is, if you look at the fintech, for instance, what is happening is that global investment is coming from the rest of the world into Nigerian fintech, not just for the Nigerian market, but as a springboard into Africa. And the same thing can happen in our legal services, and already beginning to happen. It can happen in other services. And if you think about it, look at transportation. The one that excites me the most is insurance. $6 billion of imports. So there's a lot that we can do in the services sector. Education, travel. There are a lot. We have huge culture. So there's a lot that we can do that can start generating value in less than 1 year. Let's go to the next slide. We looked at the products, we looked at services, but we also started looking at markets. As I mentioned earlier, depending on the products that you prioritize, or the services that you prioritize, and that will determine the country of interest. But everywhere we went, there are some countries that kept popping up. South Africa, Egypt, Morocco, Kenya, and of course we have the ECOWAS country. Even in ECOWAS, if you can narrow it down to the English-speaking countries. So it's about deliberately identifying those companies that we want to go to market with, and then working with them, providing them the incentives that they need, providing them that enabling environment, so that they can go to Africa. So go to the next slide. And I think this is a great point to talk about the right of way, because we can't do this alone. You need to build ecosystems. So within every state, you need to focus on an area. We need to build the ecosystem around it. That is the only way you can bring the cost down. That is the only way you can attract our people. If you look at Lagos now, if you talk about ICT, you talk about Yaba. And Yaba, you have the hubs, you have the venture capitalists, you have X, you have Y. Because they build an ecosystem around it. Even the house price in Yaba has gone through the roof because of that ecosystem. So everything turns into positive reinforcing force. And here is, if you're thinking about it, you're thinking about the value chain. Because you need to have line of sight on the value chain to be able to say where are you going to play in terms of the value, but also in terms of where do you have that comparative advantage. And then you now need to start looking for the partners, either state partners, because already we've seen Lagos and Ogun State sign in some investment type agreement. This is what needs to happen between states. The Lake Rice is an example of a trade agreement between Lagos and Kebbi State. These kind of collaborations need to start happening. Go to the next slide quickly. We just did this as examples, but go forward. So that brings me finally to, forward please, one slide, to the topic. So after considering all these things, considering the problem that we're trying to solve, and essentially what problem are we trying to solve? The problem we're trying to solve is a problem of a cyclical economy. Anytime the oil price drops, we enter recession. Anytime we enter recession, our currency is devalued. Anytime our currency is devalued, we go deeper and deeper as the captain of the poorest country in the world. It's not that our GDP has gone down, it's just that our value in dollar terms have been declining. So it's about introducing resilience into our economy. The other thing to bear in mind is that because we are talking non-oil, every state can find its niche in Africa, in the export market. So that is how we came about the vision to make every state. And if you then think about that, you need to bring this down to communities. You need to aggregate the SMEs at the local level. It's just like what we used to have with groundnut pyramids and all those pyramids. We had marketing boards. We had centers where they grade. All the farmer needed to do was farm his or her product and bring it to where somebody will grade it, take it from him or her, and then it goes to his business, goes about his own business, and other people then move on with it. So really it's about to make every state and community in Nigeria economically viable through intra-African trading with AfCFTA. That is how we came about this. And that is how we identify that it is states that will make this happen. We can talk at the federal level, we can have policies, but if those policies are not adopted and find home in the states, then we will not get optimal results. Our mission then is, and we talked about it as well, we cannot do everything. So the best practice, or what seems to have worked, and I've heard a number of times, take one product or service, be the biggest in Nigeria and the biggest in Africa, be the lowest, in terms of scale, be the most efficient, be the biggest, be everything to bring down the cost, so that you can serve the rest of Africa. And by the way, what our research has also found is that if you look at those countries that are diversified, they are already supplying other non-African countries. Tunisia, Egypt, I think Morocco as well. They are cotton and textile. They export billions to Europe and America. So they are already part of that global value chain. So to be part of the value chain is about scale. So every state, perhaps at a regional level, see how we build ecosystems around specific products. 1, 2, but not too many. We start with one and other ones will come would come. And then capture 10% of Africa's market, just double our export revenue. And you take your own $1.2 billion of export, and just calculate your tax revenue, then I will do the math. But we also identified that for us to do that, there are 7 critical pillars. One is that we need to build that capacity. We need to produce what we are going to export. So, be it in terms of build clusters and build clusters, and those clusters are where you will then drive that volume, drive that reduction in cost, drive the specialization, because with the volume means that someone can produce a battery head. A company can produce a battery head, and that's all it produces, and it makes millions of dollars. And I don't know if it was you, Andrew, that gave me that illustration, or either you or Ambassador Arca, an illustration of companies in India. All they do is battery head. You know the battery head in your car. That is all they do, but they produce it in millions of quantities that they are big companies. So really, scale. And under that, we identified we've identified some products we call priority products in agro sector, in manufacturing, and services. And these are things that we've shared this report with you, and the idea is to guide you in actually identifying your own area. We're not saying adopt it. What we're saying is look at it and use this as a guide to now see how you can define your own strategy. The second thing is about productivity, and that is skills and capacity of our people. And if you take one thing away from Andrew and Dr. Toka, it's about high value. We looked at the British industrial strategy, when we were doing our research. What they have a couple of areas that they want to solve, but consistently you find that they want to focus on those areas that pay premium dollar to their people. So it's a deliberate attempt to actually identify that China can supply anything that they want, but in this area we want to be world number 1 or world number 2. That's the second pillar. The third pillar is business environment, friendly business environment. And I think like the right of way in building information data highway, super highway, states need to look at the multiplier effect of attracting people, attracting companies to come and set up data centers, come and set up call centers. I heard if you pick up a phone, for instance in the UK, and call Thames Water, somebody will answer you from either Durban or Cape Town. Durban is making a lot of money on call centers. They build the capacity and they are selling it globally. So it used to be India. A lot of them have moved to other countries, including Durban. So which state in Nigeria will host the biggest call center? Which state in Nigeria will host the biggest data center? Which state in Nigeria will host the biggest programming hub? This is all available for everyone to look at and capture. But it's also about automating business processes. So the public processes around how you interact with the businesses, how they pay taxes, levies, how they get information. The more these are automated at the state level, the more people can come to your state and do business. I can tell you one thing. This is my own. Andrew says he doesn't do prediction. Let me do a prediction. In the next 10 to 20 years, businesses will be looking and making movements based on what states are offering them, not the other way around. Because you need them more than they need you. Maybe 10 years, they will pack up and leave, especially the talent, especially the people that are doing in services. If there's too much hold up, they move. If the internet is not fast enough, they move. Whatever it is, they move. They have good life, they have a good cultural environment and festivals, they move. So the states need to think about it, especially because we are prioritizing services. You need to think about how can you attract and retain businesses and people to come and spend money in your states. The fifth one came out of our interaction with businesses, and which is that we have a huge domestic market. And we use auto for instance. We have capacity to assemble about 450,000 units of vehicles per annum in Nigeria today, but we are only using 5% of that capacity. But then the cost of the new car is about 50 million. Has money to buy a new car. So there has to be deliberate set of incentives and policies to make many Nigerian cars affordable for Nigeria. We talked about Hyundai, talking about Hyundai. I was in South Korea in 2006. South Korea is a hilly country. And if you're driving the Kia and the Hyundai those days, you'll be flying at 120 kilometers and then start climbing the hill and it starts stalling. That was 2006. Here in 2021, Kia is not like that, Hyundai is not like that. They are in the top 10. So again, this is something to bear in mind through deliberate policies and set of incentives. So, but we need to buy made in Nigeria products. So the executive orders, the executive orders need to cascade down to the states. But it needs to work for you as well. So even as you are attracting them, they need to put something on the table for you. Are they creating jobs? Are they increasing? Are they employing your people? It has to be a partnership. But the deliberate, it needs to be deliberate. And states or governments as a whole, not just state, federal government, local government need to drive this. Then the fifth one is infrastructure, roads, power, and so on. And now we've heard about data infrastructure as well. So, but one key slight addition to that is that we need to think about how we do that. Because if you cluster in an environment, then even someone can come and provide power, 24 hours power supply. That is why cluster arrangement works. And I think Delta State, and I think you guys already have some clusters based on the conversation we had there. So making those clusters work is very, very important. But even when you're targeting roads, if you want to build all the roads in Nigeria, you need trillions of dollars. But if you identify a particular road from Ogun State to all the way to the port in Lagos or the port in Port Harcourt or wherever, and make sure that it is working, what you would have done is, if it is agricultural products, you will reduce the post-harvest losses. And with that singular project, you are making your products attractive for the destination. So it's again thinking about changing how we think about this export and AfCFTA. We can't solve everything at once. We just pick 1, 2, and if I use that example, there are federal roads, but states are already working on and republishing a lot of federal roads. So how about a state road that connects all of you? How about that agreement? Agreed products, agreed services, agreed segments of the value chain, agreed infrastructure amongst a number of participating states, your own micro AfCFTA or NAC-AfCFTA, Nigeria Free Trade Agreement, so that your products can actually get to the port and then goes to it removes that. So the thinking that has to be there. The 6th one is about market access. When your product leaves Nigeria, someone needs to sell it. You need to identify partners. And just like I mentioned our conversation with the Premier of Natal, it's the same kind of arrangement that states will now need to start reaching out. And I think the governor finally mentioned it. There's already an interaction at Africa level among states. So it's already happening, but that is access. So, and it goes with government goals, businesses. So partnerships, who will distribute your product, who will sell your product, who will be your partner, who would you license, how are you going to do it? So, and it's important to bring the chambers of commerce on board. It's important to bring your manufacturing, your business associations and so on board, so that together it becomes a multi-agent kind of partnership. And the last one is really about, for us internally, to make AfCFTA work. It's about making sure that we establish Nigeria's Trade Remedies Authority that will look at trade malpractices and take action. Making sure that we have a functioning competent authority for rules of origin, making sure that the customs actually are cooperating well and doing what they need to do, making sure that those mutual recognition agreements are pursued and signed and are respected, so that we don't get to the point of closing borders. So that is squarely within the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, Ministry of Justice and so on, and a couple of other ministries. But this is in a nutshell, in a very long nutshell, how we've thought about AfCFTA, and we're sharing with you. The idea is to stimulate thinking in terms of how are you going to deal with this. That is why we're proposing a technical working group at the state level to be having the kind of conversation, the kind of headache that me and my team are having, because it's a big project. It's a massive project, but something, and it's a long-term project, but something that we need to do. A number of states already have development plans, but how do we tweak this with export in mind? It's about export. That is what will give you the value that you see. We've already identified a couple of bold actions, and the auto sector is one of them. The second one is about API production pharmaceuticals, which if we are able to do, then that will launch Nigeria to become a major player in the pharmaceutical value chain. The third one that we found is commercializing research findings to improve yield and promote innovation. That one came from a conversation with stakeholders, but also a report that we saw from the Food and Agriculture, FAO, Food and Agricultural Organization, I think it's called. And the forecast is that food production will go up, food consumption, food demand will go up, but the number of countries that will be secure food-wise will drop. The number of countries that will import food will grow, and African countries are at risk. And the companies or the countries that will grow are those that focus on innovation, research and innovation. And when we started exploring this, we found that I think we have about 37 research institutes, and there are tons of research findings that are on the shelves. So we started engaging them, and we are working with them, working with Raw Materials and Research Council, working with the Ministry of Agriculture and others to say, how can we bring this research finding to the private sector? This is an area that we will put out there for states that want to work with us in this. So that specific products, specific areas, trying to bring them out to the private sector to provide, to increase yield and productivity. And by the way, when you look at Nigeria's yield, can't even compete with South Africa in terms of yield. So we're talking about agricultural products. Apart from the competitive, a key element of the competitiveness we're talking about is the yield per hectare. The last one, last but one is leveraging technology and cluster development to grow the capacity of our SMEs. This is SME aggregation. And this came from a number of considerations. I talked about rules of origin. Do you think that farmer in Jigawa would be interested to go and produce and get documents that will say rules of origin in my farm for his 1 hectare? He has bigger issues to solve. So for us to be able to take advantage of AfCFTA, we need to get connect them to companies or cooperatives or associations with the capacity to and the process and systems to be able to do all these things that would enable them to take advantage of the AfCFTA. That is one key consideration. The other consideration is scale, related on the scale. For us to be able to take advantage, we need to produce at scale. But beyond that SME aggregation, we also have problem of visibility of our products. How many people here knew that we produce face masks before COVID? Can we have a raise of hand? That we produce face masks in Nigeria or hand sanitizers? Maybe is it I'm sending you to sleep or okay, just about 2 or 3. But they exist. There are a number of Nigerian products that meet the quality, but we just don't know about them. And one of the things that we are proposing, and we received a grant from the Export Expansion Facility, is connecting our businesses to e-commerce platforms. First, the domestic level, but also to push towards Africa. This is a program that we're starting in partnership with the Lagos Chamber of Commerce. We are implementation partners working with 3 states as a pilot, and as we learn and understand, then we can scale. The last one, working with ITC, is data for trade. We need the data to be able to actually make the analysis, to take the decisions that will help us to grow. So at this point, I think go to the next slide. Next slide. This is the last slide. Essentially, is to say, based on everything that I've said so far, how do we move forward? framework. So we are in 2019-2020, our committee was set up. We've been working. We have a draft. One of the very key things that we had to do was to prove that it's okay to ratify the agreement, and that we've achieved. The national strategy that we've also achieved. We have a nationwide sensitization which we've commenced. We've been to a number of the states. We established the Subnational AfCFTA program, which is part of what we are doing now. And we have a champions program. Dr. Coca is our private sector champion for ICT, and we've got at the government side and private sector side, that nominated a number of champions that will help us get our message and also push our program. It's not working as well as we want it to work, but we are building capacity as we go along. Now, with clarity on where we are going, we've started talking about our M&E framework. That is something that is critical because our role is more facilitation, coordination, but the agencies, the private sector are the people that need to actually pick this up and run. And in the next year is implementing the programs that we have under the 7 pillars and working with you at the state level as well to push. And then I expect that by next year, those schedules, those rules of origin negotiation will be completed. We'll start registering companies for AfCFTA export. And then Ambassador Arca and his team will start negotiating mutual recognition agreements, customs cooperation agreements, based on the input that we're getting from the private sector, but also from the state in terms of where the priorities lie. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, pardon the very long presentation, but hopefully I've confused or convinced you. Thank you.
Elaborate presentation. Do we have any questions for Mr. Francis? That's a number of questions. Okay, so we'll start with the gentleman. The gentleman, with his hands up. Yes.
You mention of the fact that the states should begin to gear up and prepare. We also linked up with what Governor Fayemi said, that there are already subnationals at the African level working together. But I have some concerns. We have the National Automotive Industrial Development Plan, which has not been assented to, and there are still concerns that it is holding back investors, because we also need to put certain things in shape so that we can prepare the ground for private sector to begin to key in as we expand. So I don't know whether you can give updates on that, and also on the review of the trade policy, which we need to get all these things in shape before the actual takeoff. Thank God we are still at the negotiation of rule of origin. At least as we prepare the ground for the full takeoff, some of the domestic policies that we have, like the national, you mentioned the automotive opportunity, about 4 million vehicles to be exported and all that. And also on the fintech, there are concerns too, with the challenge the commercial banks are having with some fintech companies, which is not a noble one for this kind of trade pact that had already commenced. That kind of challenge can stifle investors' confidence. The challenge the fintech companies are having with the commercial banks in terms of license opportunities for digital economy, as it were. So these are some of the issues that I want you to speak to, so that we can also prepare the ground for investors to come in as we expand for the after. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The presentation was so detailed. You have actually enlightened and confused me at the same time. All of it, because everything we speak about now actually speaks to export promotion. The Because as it is, when the ambassador was making his presentation, I was concerned that in 54 countries in Africa, only 22 have signed on to the agreement. So, there's still a long walk to freedom, like Nelson Mandela would say. I think the negotiations will throw off certain things that will actually make whatever strategy we have organic. It will be something that will have to be reviewed, because as they go into negotiations, you give, you take. So I think it is important to have a look at this. But I'm happy that the Nigerian Governors Forum is here. Because usually when you want to recalibrate or the thinking in customs service, because for governors or for subnationals, customs means revenue into federation account. And that is another level of negotiation that actually needs to be taken into cognizance. And I believe that with this type of discussion, since the technical working group will continuously share the headaches that you have been having for the past couple of months, I think we should look at it this way. But in order to make some progress, I believe that you gave a name, Nigerian Free Continental Trade Agreement. Let's focus on that as we evolve, as the after AfCFTA gets ready. Otherwise, it will be like another West African Monetary Union, common currency, and the rest of them. We have 3 decades now in discussing all these things, and I think it is important that we look at it. But all the same, I believe that for subnational, by the way, I'm from Gombe State, my name is Dr. and interstate collaboration and joint projects, I think, is the key to whatever it is that we are bringing into this. Because if you look at all the numbers, our HDI numbers are atrocious, and yet we're saying we want to export grains at the expense of human capital. Also, so the issue is that this assignment you have goes beyond. In fact, we should task your project management capability beyond what it is doing now. Because what you're doing now is the implication of what we will do vis-a-vis, you mentioned food security. If we want all the farmers to migrate to be doing this so as to get export, what is the implication of food security? And the numbers I see for AfCFTA are modest. Only $450 billion US, representing just about 7% increment, lifting people out of poverty. It's something that I think the numbers are not, to my mind, ambitious enough. So we should have more ambition around our NAC-AfCFTA. That I think that way we can have a national consensus around, and we move when the AfCFTA is ready, they've negotiated, and the rest of them will now adapt and make sure that at least our strategy plugs into that. I think that is more sensible. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I have no concern, or other concerns. I am hoping the national security alleviate those concerns I have. I mean, you've talked about the movement of products and services across Africa. And we all know within Nigeria, the talent and the skills are not an issue. We have very talented people in the business space. But the challenges for them are, number one, issues of electricity. And two, the issue of multiple taxation. Now, we all know to run a business in Nigeria is quite expensive, looking at the cost of electricity per se. So that fits into what you are talking about, the scale of production. We know how most businesses run on generators, they have to worldwide fuel and fuel and whatnot. So that would actually eat into the scale of how much they can produce. And if we look at that, going further, when we look at the fashion industry in Africa, it's a 30 billion market, $30 billion market. And even looking around this hall, you can see people wearing good clothes, dresses. Even Andrew is wearing very, very nice one, and I'm sure it was made in Nigeria. But the fact is, if we are going to tap into that 30 billion market, the issue of electricity remains a challenge for the fashion industry people. That's a serious challenge. And then you go forward and look at the issue of multiple taxation. Now we know most states rely on tax as one of the bases of IGR. And what are the states, or what could the NGF and the ANC do, to look into that and sort of alleviate that pressure of having multiple taxation for small businesses? And if you look further, it actually started businesses from leaving the comfort zone of being in the informal sector, and they are afraid of moving to the formal sector because of taxation. So they are comfortable there. And this is a serious challenge. And if we want to engage businesses to move around Africa freely, we know Nigeria is a hub. We have multiple and tons of skilled people running businesses in Nigeria. And that is a issue for them. Taxation. So what kind of so-called media from there for them to be able to scale up and ensure the movement of their products around Africa. And going forward again, you look at you talked about having call centers and whatnot. This will bring us an issue of electricity, issue of internet facility. Until we get this right, how can we attract such coming to the country? For say Vodacom or some other business around the world to come and say we're going to have a call center in Nigeria. You talked about having an ecosystem, which is excellent. I mean the whole world now around, the way you look at people are going into that. Particularly businesses. You need to have a common facility center, the concept of a common facility center for businesses, whereby you house them in the same area. And like you rightly mentioned that, someone can even provide the electricity as part of the service. But again, that feeds into how can we be competitive with our products with other countries that have better services in terms of electricity and internet services. How would we compete with such products from around Africa? Again, you look at certain things like the rigid process of government intervention, because you mentioned the NEPC grant or service support. But again, the process I think is a bit rigid. So how can these businesses fit into that without too much stress so that they scale up their services? Thank you very much.
Okay, let me start with the first one. NAC-AfCFTA. I think so on that one, I know that a lot of policies being worked on, the Ministry of Infrastructure and Investment, that will update the NIDD. They also work towards a bill that will be passed by the National Assembly. So because that is a key requirement of investors, foreign investors to come into Nigeria. And so it's something that is ongoing. It's something that we need to do very fast, because countries like Ghana are already doing that and already seeing the results. So if there's any doubt in our mind how that would work, we just need to look at Ghana. But I know that this is being worked on. And by prioritizing this as well, that is part of why we will lend our own small support to push that. We're working with NABDC to make sure that this moves forward, but it is absolutely critical. Beyond that also is work with the manufacturers themselves to actually say, so how do we tell the conversations around the vote is talking about the fact that the rule of origin and the negotiation now is between 30 to 40% value of value of originating material, so 40% local content. Our local content is about 5%, so whatever we do, we need to work to make it to that level. So all these conversations are ongoing, and hopefully in the new year, we will see concrete actions. The trade policy as well is being reviewed, and industry trade and investment. But what I can also say that, even as these things are being worked on, there's a lot that we need to do. There are so many elements of what needs to be done. So it's continue to get ready, even as we're working these. In terms of the fintech, I don't know specifically the problem that you're talking about, but what I can tell you is that in our engagement so far, there is no sector that we've looked at that does not require update in a policy or a law, regulations or law, to make export happen. So we recognize that, and it's part of one of those pillars, and we have a work stream actually trying to understand what needs to be done and working with the relevant agencies, because it's their job. There are agencies that are responsible for that. All we need to do is flag them and work with them to get them done, right? So it is work in progress, and that is why I said this is a long-term thing. You keep chipping at the problems one by one. By the way, when you chip at one, you find out that you have two more problems, and you chip at those two, you find out that you have three, until you get to a sustainable level. So I'm not kidding myself that we have our work cut out for us. Not me, us. Our work cut out for us. In terms of there are 55 countries in Africa. 54 have signed the AfCFTA agreement. Only Eritrea has not signed. Out of the 54 that have signed the agreement, and the information I'm giving you is a Google search away. Out of the 54 countries, 38 of them have ratified the agreement. So we have a considerable size of people to work to get this going. Even in the agreement, there's a rule of variable geometry, which is that for as long as something has been agreed, when you join, you just move on with what has been agreed. So we're not waiting for everybody to agree. As long as those that have signed agree and make the rules or whatever, everybody will have to follow in line. Your point about customs and regulators in general is a very valid one, and it's a balance that we need to make, because we need the money to build roads, but also need to facilitate trade. So that mindset shift is necessary. It won't happen overnight. The incentive for that mindset to change is something that will grow on an incremental basis. There are a number of projects in that regard, and one by one, I think over time we'll start to see the impact. By the way, in terms of, you may have heard about the PAPSS, Pan-African Payment System, which is coming as one of the tools to operationalize the AfCFTA. Good news, that what you have started is part of the West Africa Multi-Union Payment System, the Pan-ECOWAS Payment System that is now being adopted. So all those things that have been going and bubbling in the background have not been in vain. It's just that a lot of things the problem we are solving is very, very complex. So as you keep working at it, opportunities come and you tap into them. And by the way, the PAPSS is already live and companies already transacting on it. The interstate collaboration, yes, is something, it's already happening, but the message is that it needs to happen even more. It needs to be deliberate, and it's something that would happen at the state level. Talking about the food security, at the end of the day, it is a critical consideration. Energy security is a critical consideration, and COVID has also told us that health and well-being is a critical consideration. You must maintain minimum level of capacity locally, but it's not either or. So you need to be deliberate in terms of the food that we eat, right? And even in the agreement empowers state parties or countries to take action if the balance of payment is affected, if action will cause public disorder or things like, if your ability to operate is hindered. So you're not signing away your sovereignty. I think it's important to know that. So it is something that to note. So and we cannot wait for AfCFTA negotiations to complete, because the industries and everything that we're talking about now, you will not build them and wait. There are opportunities to export, and like I said earlier, Africa is only 2% of global. The countries that are making a meal of export are already exporting to other non-African countries. So the key message, the first message is export. The second message is export to Africa. Okay. Now, in terms of my brother from Canada, electricity, multiple taxation, power, these are issues we must solve. It's not for the governors forum alone, or myself, and federal government, states, local governments need to happen. I know a number of states have gone ahead to start building power plants to supply themselves. It is a kind of thing that we need to explore. And if you think about the aircraft industry in the United States or even in Europe, if you look, these sectors benefited from a lot of government help. So this help needs to come from federal government, from state government, from every level. I would go as far as saying even from community unions, because the important thing is we must create jobs. We must make it attractive for companies to come and establish. So whatever we need to do, we must do. We must give them those incentives. And it is a mindset shift, like Dr. Coker said. If you make it easy, if you remove the right of way fees, and companies come and run fiber optic and build data center and build call centers in your area, they will employ people that are residents in your area. So you need to do that analysis in terms of this cost of opportunity forgone, the opportunity cost. This 100 naira that you forget or that you lose in terms of let's even call it 100 million or a $2 billion that you lose from in terms of right of way fees. How much in terms of tax revenue does it give you? And by the way, the right of way is a one-off. The tax revenue that comes from the investment is continuous, and it can only increase because of the indirect benefits that come from. So it's a mindset shift that we require. And I think I'll end there. I don't know if you wanted to say. Maybe we can take on more questions later because we are running behind time. I think, so what next? Well, the next thing is introduce the breakout session and we have lunch. I know we have our panelists for the next session here, but perhaps we can have lunch with us. Great. So thank you very much. Lunch is downstairs, so we'll have our ushers will direct you to the lunch room downstairs. We all have lunch, and then we energize you, and then we continue. So you want to introduce?
Everyone, welcome to Abuja. Yeah. My name is Michael. So I'll briefly take us through the breakouts overview. Then from there we go for lunch and prayer. As we come back from lunch and prayer, we are not coming back here. We're going back to our breakout rooms. My colleagues will be directing you, so we have people who will direct you up there for the breakout sessions. For the breakout sessions, we've divided us to 6 clusters, and each cluster is according to the geopolitical zone. Can you put on the slide, please? So we have all the geopolitical zones as one cluster: the North Central, the Northeast, the Northwest, the Southeast, South-South, and Southwest. So we have 6 breakout rooms for us. So we just go to our geopolitical regions. We have facilitators that are waiting for us there. We are happy to get support from our partners, from PwC, from KPMG, from EY, from Deloitte, and from Idea Next. I want to appreciate you. So they'll be facilitating these sessions, and we have AfCFTA's staff as well that will be at the breakout rooms. Can you go to the next slide? So just the ground rules. We need to know that there is no idea that is stupid when we get there. Please, let's put all the ideas on the table. Let's not be constrained by current realities. Let's look into the future, and let's not criticize people. Let's work as a team in the breakout sessions, and let's make sure that we engage in constructive dialogue. Let's not confront anybody from our state or from other states. Let it be very collaborative, and let's focus on what is right and not who is right or who is wrong. Those are some of the rules that we have. The facilitator will be sharing more with us there. Can we go to the next slide? So in terms of role, so when we get there, we need to have a team lead. So we need to appoint a team lead. We need to appoint a timekeeper as well. We already have the facilitator from the consulting partners, and we have a scribe from AfCFTA who is going to do that. So this is just a guide in terms of approach. So we need to appoint the team officials. We need to understand the breakout session, what the objective, what the expected outcomes, which will be guided by the facilitators. Then we have like 40 minutes or more than that, depending on how many hours we have in the breakouts. We're going to have like 3 breakout sessions, one today, one on day 2, and one on Thursday. So the time for those allocated to those breakout sessions actually vary. Then we have like 10 minutes to make our presentation. We need to know that each cluster, we come back here to have a playback. So the team leader for each of those clusters will come back and make a presentation on what has been discussed at the breakout session. So we must come out of that breakout session with a common understanding and with a common agreement. Do we have another slide? So I've mentioned this before. So what we need to do now, we'll be going out for lunch break and for prayer. So we have this for 1 hour. By my time now is 2 o'clock. So by 3 o'clock, please let us be in our breakout rooms. We'll be guided outside. This is not where the breakout rooms are. The breakout rooms are outside. So my colleagues outside will guide us there. But now the lunch